So just to start off, I'm curious about this with most directors, but like when did you get into film? Like what got you into film?
Well, I realized kind of what path I wanted to take when I was 14 actually. We were doing an Amnesty International week at my junior high, and I decided to do this study on torture and went to the local newspaper and was just shocked by all the pictures that were never published because they were too brutal and graphic for the general audience to watch. So what I did is that I took some of these and put together a pretty big presentation and drummed together my whole junior high to talk about the importance of knowing
Hmm.
in order for us to do something about it. Because how can you do something about something if you don't know about it? So that was sort of my awakening, and that the slideshow I put together had a pretty big impact on my junior high. And I also just realized, I mean, it was a good lesson in sort of how you mold storytelling around what needs to be told. And then I started. I mean, I've always been interested in film, but I kind of went into film through journalism. So I studied at the University of Texas in Austin and started with journalism, and then quickly jumped over to documentary film production.
Your film Praying for Armageddon. We see a lot of scenes feature a lot of these different evangelical leaders like speaking to a bunch of different people, particularly in like the opening. Um, why like I'm particularly curious, I guess, about that opening scene because like who are those people who are listening to them? Because they don't seem to be part of the group. But and also just in general, why do you think these people are like seeking these leaders out?
So you're talking about a scene where Gary Bird, one of our main characters, is holding a knighting workshop, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So Gary Bird is a biker pastor. His congregation, M25, is a congregation of bikers, former veterans, and people that sort of follow Gary's mission to bring the word of God out of the church and kind of on out on the streets, literally, and to the people. And he has been very successful holding sort of men's groups where they it's pretty impressive. They talk about a lot of some of the most important issues that Gary sees as you need to go through to be a real man. And it's everything from how you should treat your woman and your family, but also how you should worship and carry your faith with you. So he meets a lot of different people on the road.
All right. I was also curious about I think Frank Schaefer. Someone you kind of brought out as like a someone who very much understands their beliefs, but also still runs as a outside voice. How did you run into him, and like how do you believe his voice contributes to the film as a whole?
Well, I think I first heard about Frank Schaefer because he's one of the most outspoken sort of former evangelicals. I mean, he was set to be sort of the next big leader in the evangelical movement, or at least sort of take over from his father, Francis Schaeffer, who was one of the founders of the pro-life movement, very, very strong figure within the evangelical movement. And Frank was sort of trained to take over sort of the reins after his dad. And he flew around in private jets and talked to, crowds of 30,000 people. And I was always very moved by, Frank's story And when we first started talking to, like, he is a very, solid man that has been through a lot and thought a lot about his own faith and also about the inner workings of the evangelical movement. And I always think that, Frank Schaefer is a whistleblower, and whistleblower often like are able to sort of take us inside closed communities and share some of the insight that usually is very hard to access for the general population.
All right. I basically had the same question about Lee Fang, who also is a big part of the film, his reporting.
Yeah, so me and Lee Fang, we go kind of way back. We met during the production of A Human, which was my last film, that looks at how artificial intelligence is changing our lives and our world and our future. And Lee is an independent investigative journalist who has looked a lot at the powers in our society, how lobby groups work in DC, but also how the big tech works in Silicon Valley. So when I met Lee, I was also working on Praying for Armageddon, and he simultaneously was working on a story on some of the evangelical groups, lobby groups in DC. So then we started talking, and we decided to go into this, go on this journey together. So Lee's investigative journalism has definitely been a very important part of this film and the research behind it.
Yeah. I see a lot of the footage that you guys shot yourselves, like, looks very, very good. What kind of look were you guys going for with your cinematography, and like how did you kind of achieve that?
Well, we had, we kind of wanted, first of all, we had a huge international team. And my US co-director, Micah Rowley, is also from Texas and has an evangelical background himself. Both his parents were evangelical pastors. And he also happens to be from Texas, around the same area where Gary is from. And me, like, having lived in Texas, Texas has a special place in my heart in a lot of ways, and we really wanted to sort of bring out the warmth of sort of the grassroots in Texas. So that was one realm that we worked with, and then we have the investigative realm, which is more Lee's realm, that is more kind of House of Cards like as a film reference. I think Breaking Bad was actually like one of the references we used as far as like cinematography and color as well in Gary's story. And then we had the Holy Realm, which is sort of where, because it was also important for us to sort of lift up some sacredness in the film, because we really, we do pay the deepest respect to our characters and also the issue that we tackle. And we wanted to show some of the beauty of the sacredness as well in the film. So those were kind of the three dimensions that we worked with as far as our cinematography.
Awesome.
As well as and the post-production. If
Yeah,
you want to be technical about it.
yeah. No, it's always really cool to see, especially documentaries try to like grab that cinematic look. I think you guys definitely did that. I've seen a good amount of portrayals of like kind of the radical Christian rights like influence on America, but what like elements and content do you think makes your documentary stand out compared to like other news clips and documentaries that kind of cover that same kind of area?
Well, I think that for me, like, our film just could not, unfortunately, be any more relevant. Praying for Armageddon really shows how the fundamentalist evangelicals that are sort of the backbone of the Republican Party has so much power from the grassroots through megachurch empires and all the way up to the political higher levels in DC, where they influence and also threaten U.S. democracy that we have seen in the last years, but also very much so influence U.S. foreign policy when it comes to Israel and Palestine. And in doing so, and by supporting right-wing settler organizations in Israel, they are also, like we're showing in the film, really adding fuel to the very volatile situation in Israel and Palestine, and sort of destabilizing the whole of Middle East. And I think that what we do in the film is just to sort of show the whole scope of that, right? And the whole context and the connections between everything. And even though the evangelical movement in the States is very well known, I don't think that most people realize the force and the power of the fundamentalist movement within the evangelicals, that basically interprets the biblical prophecy of Armageddon literally, where they see it as their responsibility to push for the end of our civilization. And that this kind of mentality and mindset actually has such a strong influence and so much power in the States. I don't think it's very much known in the US or in the rest of the world. I mean, this is also, to me, not just a US or Israel and Palestinian issue. It's a global issue, because these fundamentalist evangelicals is a global movement as well. And it's so important for us just to be aware that, we sort of have our own like Armageddon lobby in the Western world that we need to be aware of, because fundamentalism usually does not lead to anything good. And it's very important to be able to talk about these things and have a debate about what's going on.
Yeah. I was curious why you, like, what your specific purpose was for choosing the title Praying for Armageddon.
Oh, we had a lot of titles. We really,
Okay.
we really did. But it is, for me, like, it brings out the essence and the contradiction, because I do believe in the power of prayer for a lot of things. But when you start to pray for Armageddon and doomsday or the apocalypse, that's something different. And it's important for me to sort of wake people up to what is going on. And I think that title serves that purpose really well.
Yeah. I'm just curious what, so you mentioned, like, you find the importance of prayer, like, very, like, important. How do you think, like, what's your perspective on, like, the power of prayer, I guess, in general?
Well, I think it's, I'm not religious personally, but I do believe in gratitude. And I do think that prayer sort of creates that space of gratitude, right? And intention. And I think it's important for us to be grateful and to also to live intentional lives. So hopefully we can do more good in the world. And I also think, it's also beautiful in some sense when you look at how prayer also brings people together. And it's so important for us as humans to have sort of a common cause and feel like we belong to a community. And I think that's also something that, we kind of see in the film, like the importance of for people to come together and worship brings out this, like, extreme sort of joy and ecstasy. And I think that's beautiful in a lot of ways. I just, wish that they were maybe a little bit more aware of how inclusive they are as they do so, because there is a lot of hatred and bigotry and scapegoating in these communities as well. For example, how the evangelicals are sort of always looking for signs of the end times, and sort of everything from 9/11 to climate catastrophes and COVID and wars that happen, sort of punishment from God because we have homosexuals, or the LGBT movement, just gets. I mean, it's just kind of, when you start to look at, the reasoning behind all their also hateful prayers, let's say it that way. But the values that they push out is extremely alarming to me.
Yeah,
Sorry,
for sure.
that was such a long. It's a super complicated issue.
No, for sure.
I just want to say that I appreciate how prayers bring gratitude and intentions to people. I just wish those intentions were maybe good for most of humanity.
No, I really appreciate that. So I was curious about like what was the process like finding a lot of these different voice clips and images and the like kind of archival video and footage that we see in the film?
Well, the archival process was immense. It was important for us to show that this is a movement that has a long history. We also started this production before Trump and Pence and COVID, and it has been such a wild journey. And it's, you know, a lot of people, like when we were working on the film, they're like, well, this is just because of Trump. But this movement was there way before Trump. It just had, a massive, intensity and also a lot of things unfolded under Trump and Pence. But the movement has been there before and continues after. So that it was important for us to show that. Also, when you start thinking about, how religion is sort of affecting the military, how U.S. soldiers carry rifles or use rifles that have Bible citations burnt into them, and showing how the evangelicals are recruiting young men and women in their armed forces to become Christian nationalists. These things were really important, and it was good to find the best archive possible. So we had an amazing archival producer and did research on this for years.
Amazing. So this is my last question. So what's after watching the film, what's the one thing that you hope that people will take away as they like finish your film?
Well, I hope people realize, the extent to which fundamentalist evangelicals are sort of setting out to destroy our civilization, and how they are a threat to our democracies and our global, situation as well. And I also hope that we manage to get a debate on this, because with the current situation in the U.S. And the upcoming new presidential election campaigns, and the crisis that's going on in Israel and Palestine, is extremely important that we are aware of the forces that are part of this battle.
All right. Again, thank you so much for speaking with me, Tonje. I appreciate your time so much. And yeah, that's all the questions I had.
Well, thank you so much. Don't worry,